All right, let's take a look at where we left off last time. I moved the camera back a little bit more just so I can, get a better look. And once we figure out what kind of game that we are truly making, like what kind of third-person game is it, an RPG, it also helps to inform sort of the way we want to set up our camera. And we also should build out a speed variable that kind of controls the speed in which our character is moving. But what will be more impressive or interesting for now is let's focus a little bit on getting our character to animate. So we have briefly inside of our blueprints, we have in our 245 character folder, we created two little elements here, two blueprint classes. And what I'd like to do is do something called a blend space. And so what we're going to do is go back into our characters folder, and we're going to go into this generic bot. And what we want to do is, do you remember when we brought in our character, it gave us these three elements. One is a physics element, which you can see here are physics colliders. And then we have our mesh itself in theory, which is, let's go back to our level. This is essentially our static mesh, even though you can still see the joint hierarchy and things like that. And, as we mentioned before, you can kind of hook up various animations inside of here. Doesn't seem, oh, this is our blueprint class. So actually, let's just go right into it. So here we are in our level, and I want to select this skeleton. And when you right click on the skeleton, you go to create, you can see that we get a bunch of these animation assets. We get animation blueprint, we get blend space, and blend space 1D. Let's take a look at these blend spaces because these are really important for essentially creating the way that our characters' animations blend between each other. So let's go ahead and click on that. And I usually just name this robot underscore and then BS for blend space. And I'm going to make a folder here, and it's going to store my blend spaces for now. And I will go ahead and grab my robot BS blend space, and I'll move it here. And then I'm going to create a second blend space just for demonstration purposes, which is our blend space 2D. So this actually, let me rename this. I'm going to name this blend space. So I'll do robot blend space. We'll do 1D. This is our one-dimensional blend space. And then I'll right click and I'll create another one. And as you're following along, it's probably pretty much a good idea. We'll create this, which is just a robot underscore BS. Now you could actually, if you like the longer names, there's nothing wrong with it. You could notice that it had actually attached the blend space name at the end. You could just write it all out. All right, so we're going to move this here. Now, hopefully I did that correctly, and they're not both 1Ds, but let's double click on this. So this is definitely not a 1D blend space. So I'm going to start off with the 1D blend space, which is this one right here. Yeah, that's definitely 1D. So what are we looking at here? Well, inside of here, you can see that it links our skeletal animation. We can adjust the paradigm set, things like that. We can work on scaling the animation itself. But for now, we're going to get into this stuff, hopefully in another tutorial series. Right now, we're looking at just the basics. So let's say off on the left-hand side here is our idle animation. So I'm just going to drop that in there. So very good. We can see here that, and I'm holding Alt and left clicking to rotate around the center point here, this axis. We can see that our idle definitely works. And then we created the second one, which is called walk. And if I hover over it, you can see that it gives us all this great information about it, the frame rate, as well as the an example of what it looks like. So I'm going to drop this off on this far end here. Now notice this little black green X here. If I hold the control key down and I just sort of move my mouse across, you can see it's blending between that idle animation and my walk. So if you wanted to, and we had created a run, you could grab your run and drop it in here. And what I might do is sort of a bonus at the end of this, create a true run and then a walk to an angle and a turnaround animation. But for now, this is pretty good just to show you the basics of a 1D blend shape. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control S, or you know what, we'll just click Save. And then I'm going to close this out. So those elements, if I go back and I open this up again, if I open up this 1D again, you can see that it saved my configuration there. So that's important. The other thing we want to make sure of is actually this right here. You can see axis settings where it says horizontal axis. I can actually name this, see where it says none, and I can just say idle to walk. And actually, let's just camel case it and make it one long word if we decide to reference this in our scripts. So idle to walk. And you can see now at 0, we are idling. And then if I go to 100% here, we are walking. All right, let's save that. And let's close that out. And let's open up. I'm going to close my project settings. I'm not going to be doing anything with that in this tutorial. Let's go to this robot here, blend shape. Now, to make it a little bit easier to see, you can see we actually have a horizontal axis and a vertical axis here. And there's these grid divisions, which are these right here. My character is not that complicated, so I'm going to make that one too. I noticed that it changed here to these two sides. And then I'm going to go down here, and these are the vertical axis. So there, notice there's 4. And if I go ahead and just drop a 2 in there, now I have these 4 quadrants. With this is great if you have 4 different animations. So let's say dead in the center here is our idle. So I'll just drop that in there. Now, it says horizontal axis here, it's labeled none. So if I just name this HORZ, which represents horizontal, you can see it updates here. So 0 in this corner in our horizontal axis, we have no animation dropped in. So essentially in this world, if we are dead center 50-50, our character is idling. Well, let's say that I grab my walk and I dump it here. So as I go from 0 to 100 in this axis, and I'm 50%, and this will make better sense, I can actually go to our, I can actually walk. So if I go in this direction, it stays at idle. So this is more of a complicated system. So say you had a turn right animation, you can actually drop that turn right animation into this side, and our character will animate turning right. And we can go back to idling, and we can animate turning left. So with us, this is a little bit of overkill because we only have the 2 animations, and we're moving our character with the cursor, or sort of with our mouse. So what I think I might do is, just for now, just to show you, I'll drop these in here. A robot walk up and then down. And let's make this vert for vertical. And let's see, it looks like I forgot to drop in another robot walk down here. So now we have this thing where we can blend at different degrees between our walks. So I'll go ahead and hit Control S to save this, and I'll take a mental note that I'll go ahead and create a bonus video where I create those different animations and stuff. And if there's time, we'll go ahead and come back and visit this and hook this up. So let's go ahead and hit Control S here. And let's go back to our level 01 complete. All right, so the next thing we need to do is create an animation blueprint to take advantage of one of these BlendSpaces that we created. So I'm gonna go back to my generic bot here, and I'm gonna right click here and, well, let's just go ahead and create the animation blueprint, and then we'll create a folder called animation blueprints, because you could have more than one. So on our skeletal here, I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna go to create an animation blueprint. So with this, I'm gonna do robot and then get rid of all of this, and in blueprint. This is what I meant before about like keeping it in there. The type of blueprint, you know what we'll do? We'll say move _ animation blueprint. So this blueprint here, if we double click on it, is really just for, it's just going to control the animation, the movement of this character. So what this is, this little output pose node is, it's outputting the pose to here. So, or to our character rather, inside of Unreal. And this is a little preview window. So for example, if I right click here and I type in the word idle, and you could turn off context sensitive if you're not finding your thing, but it's like play robot idle animation. If I drag this in and I link it and compile and save that, you can see here that the character is playing the idle animation. So it's feeding whatever animation we want to our output. Conversely, you can go in here and you can type in blend. And if you remember, we created some BlendSpace nodes for our robot, right? So we have robot _ BlendSpace here, and then we have 1D here. And you can see it has a value here of 0 to 1. So if I feed this in here, and then let's compile this, it's set to 0, right? And you can see here there's like a little graph that if we double click this, it'll take us into our BlendSpace. If I hold Control here, you can see it's moving, so we can test it out. So if I go back into my blueprint and I type 0.5 here, you can see, let's compile that. I thought it was to 1. Let's type in 1 here. Come on. Compile and save. Let's see, what values? Oh, it's 100. Okay, that's probably the problem. Okay, so let's try 50. And I'm going to show you in a second. There we go. So it's got this slow walk in between idle to walk. Now, if you don't like 0 to 100, you feel like that's a little bit too extreme, you can do 0 as our min value here, and then our max value could be whatever, 1, 10, whatever. Oftentimes, you'll see in tutorials, and it's giving us a little bit of an error because the initial way that we set it up was more of this timeline. So it's telling us that, hey, it's out of bounds, which means this dot is out here. So you kind of have to move it a little bit closer here and play with those values. So for now, I like 0 to 100. It reminds me of like test averages or something. So let's just not save it, and we'll just come back in here and leave it at 0 to 100. So then in here, 100 would be, if we compile it, a full walk. So that's how we kind of hook this up. So let's take a look at how we can trigger that with controls. And actually, you know what? We'll do that in the next video. We're already at 11 minutes. So for this video, we created some blend shapes, and we started our first foray into the animation blueprint.